Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this fire and flame wirework cabochon. Now the idea for this design actually came about from the cabochon itself, which is absolutely gorgeous, but of course it will work with loads of different cabochons. So if you want to learn how to make your own, then keep watching. So then we'll need our materials, and I'm working with a regular round silver coated copper wire, and the first gauge here is a 1mm, which is going to be the main base wire. Then I've got a 0.8mm to make the flames with, a 0.4mm for our main weaving wire, and a 0.3mm also for a weaving wire. If you don't have 0.3, you can easily use 0.4 instead. And then of course we need the cabochon that we want to capture. So I've got this 3x4cm oval cabochon. And this specific one is a resin cabochon that was created and kindly sent to me by Jarissa from Dragonfly Crafts. And it's actually this cabochon that gave me the idea for the design, because as soon as I saw it, it just screamed fire and flames to me. Now she also sent me a few other cabochons and I've really loved them all, so I can't wait to use them. This is just the first one that I'm going to use, but I'll definitely be using the other ones as well, and I've already got some ideas for them. So if you like to look at these cabochons as well, I do highly recommend that you check her out. So I'm going to leave the information in the description box down below, of course. And then of course we need our tools as well. So first of all, I've got my flush cutters to be able to cut our wire, my tweezers and nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, my 6-step bail making pliers to help make specific size loops, and finally I'm just using a crochet hook to help shape the bail. Now don't forget, you can check out the description box below the video to check out tools and materials and any useful links. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. Then we'll need to cut some lengths of wire, and first of all I have 5 lengths of my 1mm of about 35cm each. Now of course that depends on the size and shape of cabochon that you're using. Then I also have a length of my 0.8mm of about 35cm here, and this is what's going to make the flames. The 0.4mm is going to be the main weaving wire I'm just going to leave attached to the reel here, so we have minimum wastage. And the 0.3mm weaving wire, I have 2 lengths of about 50cm each. So I'm starting out with my 5 lengths of 1mm and then also my 0.4mm here, because we need to create the frame for the cabochon first of all. So just going to take 1 length of my 1mm and then towards the end of the weaving wire there, put that underneath, and first of all I just want to attach it. So I'm just going to do that by wrapping it around. I'm just going to do that 6 times, so 5 and 6. You can do it however many times you prefer, and then that's attached, and you can then move this up and down the wire. So what I want to make sure to do is not start all the way towards the end of the base wire. I want to move it in so I end up with my weave going across the middle of the base wire, but we have a decent length of base wire left because we need to use that to then capture on the back and also create the bail. So I'm going to start here. Now I'm going to bring in my next base wire, put that above the previous one, so that's the new top one. And then what I'm just going to do is take this little tail and just bring it from the back over the top of that new base wire and then towards the front there, just to kind of act as a bit of a spacer. You can always remove that layer, and then bring in the next base wire. So now I have 3, and then I'm going to continue the weave. So I'm going to take my weaving wire here, just keep that tail out of the way, and bring it over the top of all 3, and then just push the top part down a bit like that, so it kind of comes a bit of an angle, and then come up between the bottom 2 to then wrap around over the top of the top 2 like this, and try and not do it too tight because that will then pull these 2 top base wires closer together, and we still need to be able to get our weaving wire between them, not right now but in a bit, which is why I then brought the tail up between them, because that will help as a bit of a spacer. So in case you do pull your weave tighter and kind of bring the wires together, that can help prevent that a little bit. But then I want to come up between the bottom 2 again, so in the same place, bring in the next base wire as the new top one, then go over the top of the top 3. Again, try and weave not too tight. And then I want to come up between those 2 that I mentioned before. So basically now that's up right in the middle of all of them, between the 2 middle ones. And here's where we need to be able to push that weaving wire all the way down and then go over the top of the top 2 like that, and down behind again. And then I bring in the last base wire as the new top one, and I then want to come up between these 2 wires, so I have 2 above it and 3 below it, and then push that down to sit next to the other wraps, and then just go over the top of the top 2 again without pulling too tight. And this is now kind of the midpoint, you could say. So we reached the peak. Now I need to move back down on the other side again, so we're just going to do the equivalent but obviously moving downwards. So I'm going to move to come up between the 2 wires, so we have 2 base wires on the bottom and 2 above it there, and then go over the top of the next 2, so down between the top 2, and push that tight. So we just wrapped over the top of 2 base wires, come up one step down from before. So I'm moving down one, bringing that over the top to come down between the same as before. So I'm now going over the top of 3, so down between the top 2. Then I come up in the same place, so between the bottom 2 base wires, to go over the top of the next 2. So I'm stepping down 1 on the top there, and now I'm going all the way down behind and come up below the bottom base wire, so we can go over the top of the next, or the bottom 3, just like that. And now this side is equivalent to the other side, and just make sure to push that nice and tight. And then all I'm going to do is wrap around the bottom one here to kind of finish it off and seal this little section in place. And it's up to you how much spacing you want between these little sections. I'm just going to do the same amount of wraps that I did in the beginning, so 6, so that was 1 and 6, and there we have the first little section. And then you just want to continue, so I'm going to go straight on to the next one, go over the top of the bottom 3, and then come down behind, so we can go up between the bottom 2 and start making our way up to the point, and then over the top of 2, so we come down in the same place as before, then come up in the same place as before, and then step up 1 to come down, which means we're going down between the top 2. And I always kind of push them towards the side there to help the angle a little bit, and then come up between these 2 wires where I have 2, then on the bottom and 3 on the top. So we stepped up 1, go over the top of 2, come down in the same place, and then we reached the point. So I'm going to come up between the wires, so I have 3 base wires below and 2 above, push that down, and then make the very point over the top 2 base wires, and then bring the weaving wire down behind again. So this is the first half, just like before. The difference is now obviously we're not adding base wires in because we've already done that. Then we want to start working our way down again, making the other half. So come up between, so we have 2 on the bottom and 3 on the top, and then come down between the top 2. So we're just going over the top of 2 base wires, step down 1, so I'm coming up between the bottom 2, and then down in the same place, and then up in the same place to wrap over the top of 2, so I'm stepping down 1, and then we want to go all the way down, come below the bottom 1 and go down through the same place, and then that's basically it. And now I just want to wrap around the bottom one by itself. In my case here, I'm going to do it 6 times, the same as the others, so just keep it consistent. You can make more wraps if you want bigger space in between them, or make less to make them closer. That's completely up to you. And then you just want to continue creating these little sections that kind of look like flames coming up from the base until we have the length that we need to go all the way around the cabochon. So I've now got the length that I need here for my cabochon, and also I'm leaving my point 4 mil still attached, so we're not going to cut that off because I'm also going to use it for the bail. But the way you can determine how long you need your section to be here, so you can grab your cabochon and place it on a flat surface, and then grab a scrap piece of wire or cord, anything you have, and then literally just shape this around the cabochon and have it meet back up at the top, and then you can just straighten it back out, and you have a good idea of how long you need to weave, so you can compare it as you go, and then make sure you stop at the right point. But then we need to shape our piece here around the cabochon. So I'm just going to use the cabochon itself. Again, lay it flat on a surface and then put the middle of my weave at the bottom there. And then just start to shape it around the sides. So I put pressure on the bottom against the cabochon. And then just bring the sides around, following the shape of the cabochon up towards the top. The same with the other one. So we get the perfect shape that we need. And then once you got the shape in place here, we can just remove the cabochon. So I then just want to deal with the base wires here at the top, because right now one side is just overlapping the other, which is not how we want them to be. And also this initial little tail that we brought through for the spacing, we can just bring that back so it doesn't get in the way. And then what I want to do with these wires is basically have them end up intertwining with each other like this. So we just need to maneuver them in place. So just take one at a time and bring the front one here. I'm going to bring between the 2 front ones on the other side, and the next one goes between the next 2. So just separate out the wires and bring them between each other all the way. And then we can just check that the cabochon still fits. If we need to kind of tighten it back up because the frame might have opened up a bit, you can just push it back around so it fits nicely again. And then what we need to do is just kind of get some of these wires opened up a little bit. So right at the back, from the back here, I'm going to start bringing them down at a gentle curve like that towards the back, and the same with the other side. Just swap from side to side, one at a time. Just bring them down gently. And the next one. So we're kind of bringing them out of the way, but also bringing them down towards the back, where we're going to end up using them to finish off the setting when we get there. And basically I've done it so there's 3 wires on each side that I brought down. So we have 2 left up here at the top now. And what I'm going to do is the front ones, I'm also going to just put the cabochon back in, and I just want to kind of tighten this up a bit around the cabochon, because in the front ones I want to just tighten up a bit by bringing them around the side. Now it's not final yet, but just something a bit like that, plus it gets them a little bit out of the way, because then what I want to do is the last 2 wires we have left are the 2 that I'm going to be using to make the bail with. So you can just bring these others out of the way so we can work with them. And for that, I'm going to grab my tweezers and nose pliers and then place them on one wire at a time. And I've also put my cabochon back in place, so it helps keep the frame around it and we keep the shape and size. But then I'm just going to place it on the back one first, and I can tell obviously where I need to make my bend. So I'm placing it and then bringing it back upwards and kind of towards where the wire is coming from. And then the same, grab the other one and bend that back. So we have bends in both of them, but that's coming and sitting right next to each other like that. And then this is going to be the beginning of our bail. And then I want to actually start weaving the bail now. And this is where I'm going to bring back in my 0.4mm wire that I left on, still attached. And first of all, we just need to get it in position. So if we just flip it back here, you can see it's coming out from that last wire that we wrapped around. I need it to come up where the bail is. So I'm just going to kind of weave it around and bring it into the middle there. So it's now close to where the wires for the bail are. And it's in position that I can now just start my weave. And I'm going to use the diagonal wire weave here. You can use figure of 8 weave. It's completely up to you. But I'm going to first of all wrap around the bottom base wire. So basically we have these two base wires and then we're going to fill in the space between them. And I also like to make sure my base wires are going outward at an angle there to begin with. Gives a nice effect for the bail. And now obviously because these are the wires a little bit in the way, I can use my pliers to push down my weave just to get it nice and tight. And I like to just again still hold the cabochon in place just for the first few wraps so we know the position. So again, that was one round, so around the bottom one, over the top of both, just push that down and then come up between them to just wrap around the top one by itself. And that is a diagonal wire weave. Make sure that that's pushed down nice and tight. And you just want to continue like this basically until we reach out halfway of the length that the bail is going to be, which is going to end up being the top, because I want that to be the widest part, and then I'm going to move inward again. And now that you've also done a couple wraps, you can easily take out the cabochon so you don't have to kind of cramp onto that, and then just focus on weaving the length of the bail that we need to get halfway. So now I reach what's going to be the midpoint here. So then I'm just going to grab my tweezers nose pliers and I want to just bring the base wires back inwards. So just put a bend into them right after where the weave ends for now. So they're now moving towards each other again because I want the bail to then start graduating inwards. So we then have that widest point. And I'm then going to continue with the same weave. But now the difference is because the base wires are going towards each other and going towards a narrow point, the wire is going to want to slip towards that. So we just have to make sure we counteract that, which I like to do by just starting my first wrap there and then bring it over. And then as I'm wrapping on the other side, just bring that through, I always hold down the other side that I just wrapped to make sure to avoid that slippage up towards the narrow point, and then just keep pushing it down so we still get a nice and tight weave. And then the same as I go to the other side, always hold down the opposite side to where I'm wrapping, but otherwise just continue until we have the other half of the bail. So now we have a full bail here, then we can shape it. So first of all, I just want to push it forward a little bit at the base like that, and then I'm just going to grab my crochet hook here, got a nice size that I can use as a bit of a mandrel, and I want to place that behind roughly the middle and then start pushing the end back so it shapes around the crochet hook, and the very end of the weave here comes downwards and basically meets up with the beginning of the weave, and then just push it down so these two ends of our base wires are going to lay right in the middle in between the other ones that we have at the back there. And you can just kind of close up the base of the bail a bit, and then otherwise that crochet hook has provided a nice curved shape to the bail. And then I can now also go in and cut off the excess of our weaving wire that we've been using. So just make sure that you've done your final wrap around a single wire, then cut off the excess, and then just make sure to flatten that down with your tweezer nose, and then we're done using that for now. And this is then the basic frame in place. So I'm then going to grab my length of 0.8mm here because I'm going to use this to make the flames with, and using my tweezer nose pliers to help shape the wire here. So I'm going to start on one end. Now, not all the way to the end, we need to leave a decent tail. So I'm going to start a little bit in, and then I want to start making my first flame. Now I'm kind of just going to start working from left to right, but that doesn't matter. You can also start opposite, and I'm starting from one side. So I'm just going to then do one flame at a time, and I want to start putting a bit of a curve in so we get that kind of organic shape. So if you imagine the first little bend I did there was where it's going to be attached to the frame. And then from there is where the flames are going to come out. And then when I reach the tip of a flame, I'm going to then place my pliers flat and then bring the long end over the top, back on itself, like that. And then I want to make sure to just close this up a bit. So kind of like if you're making a prong. So just tighten that. There we go. And then I want to just open it up. So this is going to be the point of the flame. So just kind of separate it out. Again, I'm grabbing kind of the back part of the wire, then opening up the rest. And then I'm going to continue using the wire now, coming back downwards and still kind of following the shape that I already did, but making sure I create some spacing here. So obviously it makes it more look like the flame shape, and you can just keep moving it around however you need to. And then come down, and I've gone the curve one way. Now I want to go the opposite way. So I'm using my tweezer nose pliers here, but obviously because these are flat pliers, you can still make curved shapes. You just need to make sure when you do it to not squeeze tight on your wire, because that will flatten it. So just do it gently, bringing it down like this. And then I reach the point that's going to be the bottom of this flame. And then I'm just going to do the same thing, grab onto that point flat with my pliers, and then bring the long end back over the top of itself. So again, we get that kind of prong type, but tighten that up, put it right at the back of your pliers and squeeze until it's nice and tight. And then we can open it up, bring it out to the side. So we can see this is basically the first flame. And then now I'm going to work from here and go up and create the next flame. And really this is very organic, and you can do this exactly how you want. There's no right or wrong. And I kind of like to have my flames go a little bit opposite to each other to make it a little bit more organic looking. So making the curves kind of almost go opposite to each other like this. And I do also like to make sure that I have different heights on the flames, both at the top but also on the bottom, because again, obviously no flame are exactly the same all over. It keeps having a very organic look to it. And then you just want to continue like this. So if I'm at the top where I want the top part of the flame to be, you then put your pliers flat and then bring the wire down over the top and then tighten it up. And you basically just want to continue like this. And of course you can then reference back to your cabochon and the frame that you already made, because you need to make sure you make this wide enough to fit just nicely inside of that frame. So now I made my flames here, and then they're going to fit nicely on top and on front of the cabochon there. Now, of course, what we need to do is actually attach these flames to the frame. So just remove the cabochon, make it easier to work with. And then I'm going to attach these flames using these lengths pointing downwards, and also using a length of the 0.3mm wire. So I'm starting towards one end of the weaving wire there, and I place it behind one side of my base wire. So just start with one side here, and then I just want to attach it first of all. So wrap it around a couple of times and make sure the wraps are nice and tight. And then I want to make sure that these wraps will be sitting where that very first flame on this side starts. So it's going to be around there. And then of course we need to attach it to the frame. I need to bring that in and also decide obviously where it's going to sit. And then I want to grab my weaving wire, get to the very end of it, and you need to then bring it through two base wires in the frame, and it's going to be the two outer ones. So basically just catch that very first one and go between the gap there that we have because of the weave we did on the frame, and then just pull it all the way through. So we bring the flames closer to the frame there, and now I want to make sure I then bring my wire up through, because I want to wrap this in a figure of 8 weave, so like that. And then I go back around the 0.8mm base wire, that's the flames, and go around that twice. And then I just want to go through the frame again, so get to the very end and go through the same gap in the frame right next to the one that we just did, and again pull the wire through until we get it all the way down tight next to the other one, and again just bring it up between so we get that figure of 8 weave. And then make sure to push your wraps nice and close together. And then this is the first attachment, so now the flames are attached to the frame there, but of course we need to do it multiple times to make it nice and secure. So what I'm going to do is continue wrapping along the 0.8mm here, and I basically want to attach this to the frame at key points along the way. So I'm going to just be using the weave that we have on the frame and use the gaps in between the little sections of weave that we did, because we have the spacing there to attach this base wire for the flame. So I'm going to take advantage of that and then just continue to the next point. We're going to create a connection between the flames and the frame. Now obviously you also just have to pay attention to the fact that this wire, the 0.8mm is coming from the flames, is coming down straight, but the frame is obviously curved like this. So what we do need to do is, as we're going along the frame, we need to shape this 0.8mm wire according to the frame. So kind of just lay it on the inside there and just follow that all the way down until the very bottom. So now I made it all the way down to the bottom there, and you can see I made this 0.8mm wire as I was wrapping it follow the shape of the frame, and that's this side. So I've also stopped almost right in the middle across from where the bail is at the top, and of course you can see the other side is still loose. So that's what we've got to do now, is attach to that side as well. So just grab another length of the 0.3, and it's the same principle. Put the 0.3mm underneath the 0.8mm and just first of all attach it by wrapping around a few times, and then can push it up to where it needs to start. So right where the flame on this side here ends and where the 0.8mm meets up with the frame nicely. And then we obviously need to attach it to the frame. So I'm going to get the very end again, and you just want to go through the gap between the two front wires and then pull it all the way through and pull it nice and tight, and then come back around, make sure to go between the two to get that figure of 8 weave, and then wrap around the 0.8mm again. So you can see it's the exact same principle. And again, just work your way with this one all the way, following the shape of the frame until that also reaches down in the middle. So now I'm at the base there with both of the ends of the weaving wire, and we've attached all the way along. You can see they're wanting to overlap each other and they're kind of getting in each other's way. So what we need to do now is get rid of some of them and start to finish them off. So I'm just going to start with one of them, and I want to cut off the excess length and cut it so the very end that's left after I cut it is basically finishing right where the midpoint is and the two wires meet up. And you can just maneuver it into position if you need to, push it in a little bit, because we also want to make sure that these ends are not coming out and away from the frame. And then we can just also cut off the other one. Now what we want to do is achieve the two ends basically meeting up like this, so the very ends butting up against each other. So I just want to cut off the other one, so that hopefully is the case. So you'd rather cut off too little than too much, because you can always cut off more, whereas obviously you can't add back to it if you cut off too much. And then I'm going to try and see if this is enough. Actually, I think I just need to cut a little bit more. So just going to cut just a tiny bit more off, and then just push that into position, and then see if they both end up fitting nicely so the two ends meet up there. And if they do, then we cut off the excess of the base wire. Now what you can do if you feel it's needed is add a little bit of glue right in between the two base wires there. Maybe also if you cut off a bit too much and you're left with a bit of a gap, you can always just add a little bit of glue. I recommend E6000, and it'll just kind of fill in that gap a little bit and add some security, because then what I just want to do is basically finish off the wraps with the 0.3mm just so we kind of close up the little gap we have left. So then we just got to finish off the ends of the wire. So just where you wrapped around the last time, go in and cut off the excess like that, and then you just want to make sure to push the end in so it doesn't stick out anywhere. Of course, do the same with the rest, and also the initial tails that we left further up. So now that the front is done, it's time to start dealing with the back here. So we have all our base wires still left. Now, first of all, I'm just going to look at the two that are coming from the very front of the bale there that are crossing over, and they're coming towards the back. So I'm just going to take the one that's coming first, bring it around the back of the bale there to the opposite side, and the other one crossing over in the other direction. So they're basically crossing over each other, just like they're doing at the front. And then it's a matter of maneuvering all these wires into place. So you can do it differently than this, it's completely up to you, but I'm going to basically have them almost fanning out nice and evenly, as even as possible. So these two are going to be the top ones, and they are going to be coming out and meeting with the edge of the frame there. And then I'm just going to gradually, the next ones, spread them out as well and kind of have some nice curves in there. And the two in the middle, I also want to just separate them out a little bit so they're not straight down, but just so they gently come out from that midpoint and a little bit away from each other, and just try and separate them out like this as evenly as possible. And then to be able to finish off these wires, we need to create something that we can then attach to the frame so it will become one piece that obviously holds the cabochon in there securely. And to do that, I'm just going to be first of all taking my 6-step bell making pliers. You can use round nose pliers, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to use the smallest step, because on each of these lengths I want to create a little loop which we can then use to attach to the frame using a weaving wire. So just place the pliers where we want that loop to be, and then bring the wire all the way around so we end up with something a bit like that, basically a full circle. And what you can then do, if it's a little bit too far out so it overlaps on the outside of the frame, you can just roll it in a bit and basically tighten it up. So the aim is just to make these little loops all the way along so they line up along the frame. And once you have all the loops ready, then we can go in and cut off the excess. So grab your flush cutters, and we want to cut off the excess wire right where the circle there meets up with itself, so where it starts overlapping itself. So cut that off, because then we can flatten it, and the very end of the wire there now meets up against the side of itself. And then of course you just want to go around and do that with all of them. So now to actually start attaching them to the frame, I'm going to cut off another length of the 0.4mm. Now it doesn't matter how long this is, whatever you're comfortable working with. And then just starting from one end, I'm going to start from the top and work my way down, put the wire through one of the loops first of all, and then I just want to wrap it around the base wire that creates that loop a couple of times, and then I'm going to get to the end, and now I want to grab around the frame. So this is just going to be the very outer base wire, and I'm going to then catch onto the nearest gap we have in the weave. So in my case, that's this one. So just go through with the weaving wire here and then pull it all the way. And that's going to be the attachment point, and then come up between again with the figure of 8 weave, and then I just go through the same gap in the frame right next to the wrap that we just did. So we have 2 wraps around the frame, and pull that tight, come up between again, and then I just want to go back to the loop that I attached the wire in first, and then just wrap around again 2 to 3 times, just like when we actually attached it. And then I just go in and cut off the excess, and I'm just going to leave a short little tail because I personally like to go around and attach all of them first and then cut off the ends after, but of course you can do it as you go, that's up to you. But that is basically how we attach the loops to the frame, so just use what you got left of your wire. Now don't forget, before we attach all the loops to the frame, we need to add in our cabochon as well. So I'm going to do that now. I've done the top 4, and then if I attach these ones, it'll kind of go beyond the widest part, so I need to add my cabochon in now. So just do that here from the bottom where the wires are still open, just slide it in, and then otherwise you literally just continue attaching the rest of the loops. And then all that's left is to get rid of these little ends. So I'm just going to show you how to do that on one. So you just want to make sure you wrapped around a few times, and then go in and cut off the excess, but then leaving a short little tail there. So I can take my tweezer nose and just push it down, and then just roll my pliers in the direction that the wrap is going, and then that should tuck it away in underneath the base wire, so basically between the base wire and the cabochon. And that's the best way to get rid of them, because you don't want the ends sticking out and catching or scratching on anything. Same with the other one. So this one is going in the opposite direction, so it's just going into the middle of the loop, but still just roll it in the direction the wrap is going, and then that tucks it away nicely. And then you just need to add your chain, and then your cabochon is done and ready to wear. So I really hope you enjoyed this fire and flame tutorial. I highly recommend that you check out Dragonfly Crafts for more cabochons. They've got loads of different kinds and colours, and I certainly wouldn't have come up with this design if it wasn't for this cabochon. Now if you're interested, these pieces will also be available for sale in my shop, so I'm going to leave a link to that in the description box down below, where you can also sign up to my newsletter so you can stay up to date with all future updates. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.